Hey folks, welcome to another episode of Military Forces Unleashed. Today, we're diving into one of the most secretive and misunderstood military units in the world, Iran's Special Ground Forces. You've heard the headlines, you've seen the news, but today, we're cutting through the noise to break down what really makes this force tick. From their unconventional tactics to their shadowy operations abroad, we'll unpack the good, the bad, and the downright questionable. So, let's get into it. The Iranian military, often shrouded in mystery, operates with a layered complexity that most outsiders struggle to decipher. And nowhere is this more apparent than in its special ground forces, a combination of modern tactics, guerrilla warfare, and ideological fervor. While these forces might not have the Hollywood flair of Western special ops units, the truth is far more nuanced, messy, and, dare I say, interesting. It's impossible to talk about Iran's Special Ground Forces without first acknowledging their roots in the Iranian Revolution of 1979. Before the overthrow of the Shah, Iran's military closely resembled that of a westernized nation, heavily relying on American equipment and training. But when Ayatollah Khomeini's revolution swept the Shah out of power, everything changed. The Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, was born not just as a military force, but as a political and ideological one. Unlike most special forces, they were as much about loyalty to the Islamic regime as they were about combat readiness. Fast forward to today, and this dual mission continues. Iran's special ground forces are split between conventional units and the infamous Quds Force, the external operations wing of the IRGC. Both branches are tasked with maintaining Iran's security, but each has a different method of doing so. Conventional special forces are more about internal stability and regional threats, while the Quds Force operates in the murky world of proxy warfare, foreign operations, and deniable missions. What Iran's special forces lack in technology and funding, they make up for with unconventional warfare tactics. The Iranian military knows they're not going to outgun or outspend the likes of the United States or Israel. So, they've instead focused on mastering asymmetrical warfare. Think sabotage, ambushes, and guerrilla tactics. If there's one thing Iran's special ground forces excel at, it's making life hard for their enemies. A significant strength of the Iranian special forces is their deep knowledge of the Middle Eastern terrain and populations. While the US and its allies often struggle to navigate the complex socio-political landscape of the region, Iranian forces, particularly the Quds Force, have built long-term alliances with militant groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and various militias in Iraq. This network of proxies has allowed Iran to project power far beyond its borders, often without ever needing to officially deploy troops. The forces have honed their skills in conflicts across the Middle East, with extensive operational experience in Syria and Iraq. In the Syrian civil war, Iran's special forces played a pivotal role in bolstering the Assad regime, deploying advisors, snipers, and ground troops under the guise of military advisors. For better or worse, Iran's intervention in Syria is widely regarded as a success story for the regime. However, this picture isn't all roses. For one, Iran's special forces are stuck with equipment that might be described as vintage. Decades of sanctions and isolation from global arms markets have left them with aging gear. Sure, they have a few shiny toys from Russia and China, but much of their arsenal dates back to the pre-revolution era, or is cobbled together from whatever they can scrounge up. It's not uncommon to see Iranian forces sporting Kalashnikovs from the 1950s or driving Soviet-era tanks that at best belong in a museum. Then there's the issue of budget. Iran's economy is battered by sanctions, corruption, and mismanagement. And while the IRGC enjoys a larger slice of the pie compared to the regular army, even they are feeling the pinch. Modernizing their forces has been slow and, in some cases, non-existent. Reports from military analysts indicate that Iran's special ground forces rely on outdated communication systems and lack the logistical support that would make them a true 21st century fighting force. No discussion of Iran's special ground forces would be complete without diving into the Quds Force. These guys are the ultimate black ops unit of the Iranian military. Their job is to carry out operations abroad that the Iranian government can plausibly deny. Think assassinations, arms smuggling, and training of proxy militias. Under the leadership of the late General Qasem Soleimani, the Quds Force became synonymous with Iran's foreign policy strategy. Soleimani's death in a U.S. drone strike in 2020 was a blow to their operations, but the group remains active, particularly in Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon. However, the Quds Force isn't invincible. Soleimani's assassination highlighted a critical vulnerability: Iran's inability to protect its high-ranking military officials from technologically advanced adversaries. Despite their extensive network, they're still outgunned in regions where U.S. drones and Israeli intelligence dominate the skies. This has forced Iran to adapt, but it's a reminder that their reach isn't without its limits. One of the lesser-discussed issues within Iran's special ground forces is the tension between ideological loyalty and military competence. The IRGC, particularly its elite units, often prioritizes loyalty to the regime over technical skill. This can create a situation where officers are promoted based on their political connections rather than their battlefield prowess. It's not hard to imagine how this impacts the effectiveness of operations, especially when it comes to more complex missions that require seasoned expertise rather than just blind obedience. The domestic role of Iran's special ground forces is where things get even murkier. In addition to defending Iran from external threats, these forces are also tasked with ensuring the stability of the regime. This means quelling internal dissent, monitoring potential threats from within, and keeping a close eye on ethnic minorities like the Kurds and the Baluchis. The line between national defense and internal suppression is blurred, to say the least. The IRGC's Basij militia, a paramilitary force, is infamous for its brutal crackdown on protesters, a role that sometimes overlaps with that of the special ground forces. In the end, Iran's special ground forces reflect the country's broader geopolitical reality. They are a force of necessity, molded by decades of sanctions, isolation, and conflict. Their strengths lie in their adaptability and their experience in asymmetric warfare, while their weaknesses are rooted in outdated technology and internal divisions. They are as much a political tool as a military one, used to extend Iran's influence abroad and maintain the regime's grip at home. Whether they can continue to be effective in a world that's moving ever faster towards high-tech warfare remains to be seen. But for now, they serve as a reminder that in the right hands, even outdated tools can still cause plenty of damage. That's a wrap for today's episode of Military Forces Unleashed. Iran's special ground forces may not get the flashy headlines, but they've carved out a unique role on the global stage. Whether they're securing Iran's borders or quietly influencing conflicts abroad, their impact is undeniable. If you enjoyed today's breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the world's most fascinating military units. Until next time, stay tuned and stay sharp.